morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, doing well, hitting the throes of summer, doing summer things, keeping busy. Kids are going around. As your kids get older, Tommy, you'll notice this as well as you have younger kids right now. Like as your kids get older, the summers become like this kind of revolving door of like activities for the kids that keep them busy. So you're constantly taking them to camps and bringing them back, and then someone else goes to a camp and you're coming home and then you go on a family trip together. It's just like, it's kind of like a constant moving thing through the summer, which is good. It's the time to be outside and do
summer
things.
Go faster too, because if you actually really think about it, and again, if someone told me this when I was a kid, I would have been devastated. Summer's only 8 weeks long, really, 8 complete weeks.
Is it only 8 weeks?
Well, if you actually think about it, you have all of June, all of July, and then maybe you have a week or two in between from April or May, but that's kind of more prep. Really, that's prep for school. That's you're doing your, it's not really your summer. There are 8 good weeks of summer.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Because when it gets closer to school season, you're not going to be doing a bunch of things anyways. You're going to kind of start slowing down a bit.
Right. You're not staying up late. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always staying up late, but...
Well, I mean, from a kid point
maybe
of
less.
View, though.
Yes, true statement.
I'm going to play Nintendo 64 till 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. because my parents are outside or whatever. I don't know. No, I'm a good parent. I'm not that. You know what I mean?
True.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's really, and I imagine this too, as they get older too, those activities get longer, and not just how long it is for that day, but it's not like, oh, we have a week summer camp. Oh, no. They probably have like a few weeks of summer camp or whatever it is. Your kids are probably getting close to like the part-time jobs too. Someone's working at Oldstone by now, right?
So we have kids working now. So that's, we have kids starting jobs or old enough that they can go work at restaurants and things like that as well. So that's another thing that is, we've become essentially an Uber at this point, right? We just drive them around, take them where they got to go. And then again, also as they become more independent, they become, they want to do their own things with their own friends. It's not necessarily family all the time. So they're trying to, they're starting to venture out a bit more from the family. So that also means more taking into this house, go to that friend's house. What activities are they doing? They get invited to an activity. So anyways, it's definitely different dynamics. Summers are different than when the kids were younger. It's definitely changed a lot.
Well, this is a great question. What was your first summer job? I don't know this.
Good question. So my first summer job was teaching swimming lessons. And actually I didn't even, I was too,
really?
Yeah, I would love swimming. So I went through all the swimming courses. Like my mom would sign me up. I'd go to someone's pool in the neighborhood. This instructor would show up and we would do swimming lessons. And I think at the very end, I'd gotten through all the classes and I was taking the last class twice. So the final class twice. And they kept using me as the example, like, okay, Michael, go in and do the strokes, like show them how it's done. Like I just knew how to do all the swimming things because I swam a lot.
Yeah.
And so the instructor lady was like, actually, you're probably better than that. And for whatever reason, the rest of that year, I did my week of swimming lessons, but the rest of that year I was too young to actually go into actually be working. So I volunteered that year and I just helped out the instructor, just the littler kids that came through. I would help them swim and, I'd sit on the side of the pool and let them jump into me and like, just to be an extra helper at the pool. And then the following year was my first paid engagement of doing swimming lessons. So I helped.
Yeah.
I did that. And then I think as I got older, I could ride my bike places. And I think then I became the swimming instructor for a bit. I would go in and I would do the class instead of just being the assistant that would just show up.
Something I'm feeling that you were a backstroke guy. That was your thing. Because there's the 4, right? There's backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, and freestyle. Or not. Yeah.
And then there's like a side stroke, and then there's like treading water, and like there's all the little things. But I think the one thing that intrigued me the most was I just liked being under the water. That was fun, and I loved being on the diving board. Diving boards were the best thing for me. So we had one of the pools. Again, you go to all these different pools. You have many different places you go, and this one pool had a long board, had like two concrete side to hold the board in place, like two concrete pillar things, and it had like a spring under it. Now I'm an older person. I can identify, that spring was like a coiled spring from like a car. It was literally like a car shock the spring part of it. And it was just like a long fiberglass board with this huge spring under it. And oh my goodness, you could get some height off that sucker. I mean, that thing would just launch you. And I thought that was just the most fun, be able to like just destroy that board and just get so high. Anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Hilarious.
I really enjoyed that part of it, but I loved being underwater and just, holding my breath as long as I could, just swimming around where it just got really quiet. I just loved being under the water. It was kind of a fun, that's what I enjoyed the most. I didn't really have a favorite stroke. I guess my favorite one was like crawl stroke. That's the one that was easiest to perform, and I just did it all the time.
Man. Well, mine was
I never did competition.
My first Cold Stone, man. I think I know most of the songs still by heart.
Tommy's first firing was at Cold Stone because Tommy kept eating all the, this slice of what are all the little flavoring things.
No. The special part of Cold Stone was because you made the ice cream there. So you get there. If you were the first employee, if you worked on Saturdays, no one came in at 10 a.m. for ice cream. So you had to make your own ice cream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when it came out, soft serve, my gosh, you also, and I talked to my boss about this because I was a dumb 15-year-old. You got to do an inventory in the freezer of all the candies.
Sure.
Well, guess what? You know all those candies in there. There's Kit Kats and Snickers. It was very, very hard not to go 15, 14 Kit Kats. But no,
one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me.
Yeah, exactly. So it was fun, but I'll tell you what, I have stories from the trenches of people who just not nice people. I will share this, and then it's worth a story, and then we'll jump into it. So when you give $1 for like whatever the cause is, you could give $1, put on the board.
Sure.
And someone's like came in, and there's a bunch on there, and he's like, so if I give you $1, my sticker will be on the board. I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, by tomorrow. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so if I come in tomorrow, you're gonna put it on the board. It will be here when I get in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I'm working tomorrow, and that's the first thing you do. He grabbed me by the collar, pulled me in, and this is across the counter. And he said, because if I don't see it, I will find you. And he got up and just walked out. And I went, okay. Like,
oh my word.
Yeah. So there's just weird people out there. And
did you actually put it up first thing in the morning tomorrow?
I did that the first thing just now, just then.
I'm going to just shop's closed, guys. I got to do something right now.
Yeah. No, it's like right now kind of thing. So
I will find you. This is like Liam Neeson in like, level. Like,
I have a particular
I know where you live.
Skills. Yeah. So
exactly. Oh my goodness.
Man, it was $1. So those are the fun stories of Cold Stone.
Oh my goodness. People just need to calm down a bit. Just take a chill pill, please. That's funny. All right, let's get into our main topic today. So the main topic today will be future-proofing Excel. So Tommy, give me some context here. What do you mean by future-proofing Excel? This is a mailbag as well.
This is a mailbag.
Maybe you should read our little mailbag item here, and then we'll take it from there.
We'll dive in. Yeah. So this is our little mailbag, and let's get into our mailbag voice. I'm building Excel sheets for my company to use as sales metric dashboards. Can you talk about what would make for the ideal Excel migration strategy? I want to build in a way that makes migrating easier in the future, not harder. All right, Mike. I think there's a bit to unpack here.
I would agree.
So I want to first kind of set the stage here, and as I was thinking about this question, thinking about this type of person, right? I know this is still occurring for a lot of people. For us personally, I think when we first started with Power BI, this was kind of 80% of what we did because it was most things were in Excel. I don't know if that's still the case, but you're dealing in a world with all these Excel migrations where you still are dealing with what kind of reports are we dealing with, Mike? And I think let's set the stage here where when we're dealing with Excel, you're dealing with those types of reports. What kind of data are we dealing with?
Yeah, the very first thing I think of when I hear about this one is as soon as we start talking about Excel sheets, I start thinking initially there's manual entry of some information. So there's like data coming from somewhere. We need potentially even hey, let's put it on a shared drive and let's have multiple people like enter in their sales metrics or sales goals for their area. We're going to track it in this Excel sheet. And that way you can take all the like these kind of disparate sources and kind of pull them together and bring them in. I have found when people are building things in Excel, that's kind of the pattern by which they start. And that's how I started in Excel. I started by bringing a lot of like copy pasting, open one Excel file up, copy the data out, put it into a new Excel file, which would format it all, clean it up a little bit, and then it would be ready to use for the reporting. And then I could build my graphs on top of that. And then, that was the output. So in this example here, I'm guessing that that's going to be part of it. My other feeling on this one as well is the business has kind of got their hands tied a bit. So this is a place where they maybe have Power BI, but maybe they don't have access to create workspaces. They're not able to do the things they need to be building Power BI or other places. So all they're given is Excel. This also makes me think that they may not have access. Again, this is a speculation, but this person writing this may not actually have access to the SQL database or where the data is coming from. So there's no Power Query, there's no automation, there's nothing there. So that's kind of where my starting point is. My starting point is we haven't learned Power Query, we're not automatically loading things in, and we're doing a lot of manual transformations. So I'll just pause right there. That's kind of where I'm starting. What do you think? Are there any assumptions that you're putting on top of this question, Tommy?
No, I think there's a few things too. I think it always starts simple and gets complex too, where it may start with pivot tables, but there's probably some DBAs. Someone presses a button and it does some refresh to all these different Excel files. Usually when you're dealing with someone, when they get to the point where they're asking us questions about Excel, you're dealing with something dang complicated. And it's more than just a single Excel sheet talking to each other. It's multiple Excel sheets that have some connections. It's ridiculous formulas too. And let's not forget here with Excel, I may not know where all the Excel formulas may live, but they are so integral to what the final output is. Any Excel sheet I've seen has, whether it's that kind of reference table and it's a ridiculous index match and VLOOKUPs. Personally, I'm an index match type of guy, but it has these kind of reference tables to say, hey, well, this person on this date with this sales territory has this, which connects to another Excel sheet that's going to have to do the calculations at once. It is such a hard dependencies where this person didn't say, I'm building Power BI reports. They're still building Excel sheets. So you're dealing with intricacies of complexities of different Excel files with different formulas, probably not documented anywhere. And I promise you two things. It's a lot of head knowledge, and whoever's building this has it all up here, but it's probably not in some shared place to say what the steps are to do it. And the final output, this is where I also go to, Mike, not just the engineering side of it, but what does that actual dashboard look like? Well, it's Excel, right? So we're probably not dealing with too many bar charts. We're probably dealing with rows and rows of tables and rows and columns that are kind of nested with each other too. It's a lot of numbers in one place. Now, someone can see it, someone can take the time to look at it, but you're dealing with those two complexities of it's a lot of output and a lot of process to get there that it's really hard for this to be sustainable with one person to do this, especially. Would you agree with before we go on, would you agree with the idea of that final output? Like, what does this actually look like? Because I always go there. What does a lot of Excel sheets kind of look like at the end?
Yeah, most of the ones that I deal with, I mean, again, I think you've hit the nail on the head on like one of the more complex pieces of Excel sheets at the end. And I'm writing some notes here, right? So there's probably a lot of looking up of things, right? Lookups or index matching because you're trying to go find values and join them together. So in places where I see inside VLOOKUPs, XLOOKUPs, or index match, right? Whatever those patterns are that you're using, those are being used in order to build a relationship, basically. So I'm also looking at this Excel file and trying to interpret like what's happening inside the Excel file and what does that equivalent experience look like inside Power BI. So that would be one of them. Index match, VLOOKUP, that's a relationship between two separate tables. So that part is you just need to bring the data in. You need to start learning how to form the data in order to build the data model. Because you're doing the data model across various sheets inside the Excel document. You're not actually building what I would call a proper data model that's stored in memory that could hold more data, right? So that's one thing. I think, Tommy, also you're going to a lot of people do a lot of filtered sheets of data.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they build data tables inside. I'm not even going to use the word tables. They build data sections of the Excel sheet, and then they apply filtering to it, so they can filter the section of that data. Many people don't even use Excel's feature of a table, which I think is a major miss. Honestly, I think using tables in Excel is incredibly powerful. And so I would immediately start figuring out how to get tables made inside Excel. VBA is usually around, and this probably varies a little bit. When you start using VBA for stuff, it feels like to me that's trying to build an app-like experience inside Excel. So that's where you're trying to build, like your point, you said buttons. VBA is for buttons and do something or process some data or load something in or automatically produce something. So you're trying to take existing data and like process it with these things. I mean, I remember when I was building VBA stuff, I built an entire ribbon inside Excel to help our company do statistics on various measurements of items. Like we'd have this, and you basically would select either a row of data or a grid of data, press a button on the Excel bar, and it would automatically like build a bell chart for you and give you the statistics that you needed specifically for it. And it was using all the formulas from Excel. So like everything in there was like auto built for you. So you could just grab data, click a button, boom, something just popped out. And it was already formatted and exactly the way we wanted it. So it's those kind of things where you're supposed to be using VBA. It's doing like a multi-step something to build the experience that you want. And again, I'd look at VBA that's kind of like multiple pages. That's kind of like around bookmarks. That's kind of like, that's where I would start doing some of those things. VBA, Visual Basic, is also a part of Power Query. So if you're transforming data and doing things with the data pieces, that's what the Power Query engine would be doing as well.
I did not know that, actually.
Well, think about it. What I was doing when I was actually loading data from a range of cells, and the range of cells
was the same code.
Well, think of it. I mean, I'm picking up cells like a large table of data. I'm then potentially transforming it. I'm doing aggregations on it. I may be like doing some math to it or calculations with that information. And then from that, I'm outputting a result, right? So that essentially is it, on the calculation, the number side, it's doing the math of what Power Query could be doing. Power Query can aggregate. Power Query can provide you averages and sums and other data about the information you're getting. So that's another area that I think about there. And then the last part I think I see when in the more complex pieces is pivot tables, pivot charts. Those are more the advanced side of things. And then sometimes people are even using slicers. So there's this a filtered slicer on top of the pivot table that's kind of in there as well.
Slicers. So, and I would like kind of, we laid this out. And I think for a lot of newbies who are listening or people who are kind of new to the game, maybe they're starting with Fabric last 4 years. I think a lot of people still ask and this question, like, well, why do people use Excel? Why all this headaches? And to use a word that we've used on the podcast before, agita, headaches, anxiety around using Excel. Well, if you remember, Mike, it's accessible. And all the things we're talking about, it may not be the most practical, but for a lot of people, that data, to your point, well, I don't have access to SQL. I don't have a database engine. I don't have maybe even Power BI or don't know how to use it, but I've been skilled in Excel and everything here is accessible. And I think we have to have a little compassion or a little empathy here for a lot of people who they have built these roots and really this ecosystem around Excel because it's been accessible for so long.
I think you're right, Tommy. And I don't know what the real number is for like monthly active users.
Right.
But I've heard numbers of anywhere where like 700 million to up to a billion people. Like I have yet to go into any company, and even let's imagine. Let me just riff on this for a minute, Tommy, and I'll put it back to you. Right? I have yet to come into any company that has no Excel somethings like sheets and tables, and like every company has something. You're either using Microsoft Excel products, or you're using Google Sheets, or you're using Smart Sheets. Like it's one of these three things. Like someone has a space there. They all have this experience where no matter what business you're into, there's always these tables of data. And so yes, there's a billion people using Excel. So that's a huge market audience because it's a staple. If you have a business, if you show up to work, you're given some tools by default. You have email, 100%. Everyone's got that.
Yeah.
The other thing you've got some sort of Excel and you've got some kind of word processor. Likely, you've also got some kind of presentation program. Those are like the 3-4 core programs. Like if you're going to run any business, you have to have those things
You learn in college
to work.
Yeah.
To work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, Excel may have 1/7 of the world's population covered in that. If it's 7 billion people in the world right now, or whatever it is right now, but like 1/7 of the world is covered by Excel. Like the rest of the people, there's likely higher coverage if you're talking about like Google and all the other products that are out there as well. There's a lot of people using those products.
And I'll reiterate your point. When my first real job, not Cold Stone, I was working at a digital marketing agency, and I kind of became known as the Excel guy.
Yep.
I had to talk to my boss because I was like, about 3 hours of my day, I'm getting questions and helping people with their Excel, because I happen to, kind of like, I know Kung Fu, this is the way I learn. So people knew that I knew all these formulas and how to do things. And I'm like, I can't do my job because all I'm being asked to do is help people with their Excel. Now, there's a difference here because what are people trying to do here? And we'll kind of progress here because I actually just had this conversation with a friend of mine where it's a giant company. To your point, everybody uses Excel. Everybody. And it doesn't matter whether you're a small business or a multi-conglomerate insurance company. It doesn't matter. And I still hear stories, Mike, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a job forever. So the thing is, and I think this is the new thing, and I want to put a little point here. When we look at the career, the life of Excel and the life of data, there's going to be this point where a Fabric came out or where Fabric became accessible that, to me, I'm having this realization that's drastically going to change it. Going to the question here, like, how do you make this easier and not harder? How do you make an Excel migration easier? To be honest, if you're just straight in Excel, there is no really easy way to migrate that because it is such a manual process. You can do some things. You can upgrade to Power Query and you get some automation that way. You can use Power Pivot and pivot tables to get some automation that way. But you're never really going to get to a point where every migration is going to be a copy and paste because you're not dealing with anything structured. Everything is still so freestyled. Anyone could put their own information in. Those Excel tables can be, again, freestyle to we'll go back to the swimming idea here. But everything, it's not in a structured way. And again, people still use Excel because it's most accessible. Mike, I think we're getting to a point now with Fabric where all the things in Fabric are accessible or becoming more accessible. I'll give you an example here to kind of put this point home. Talking to a friend, he works at a pretty big company, and he's talking about what their process is every month. They work these are their sub companies, and every month about 35 of them send them Excel sheets. That's their own data that then they have to clean up, that they have to do reconciliation on, but it's all Excel. And I'm going through this in my head, and I'm as my friend's talking to me, and I'm like, my gosh, this could be literally in a lake house right now, and we could just have some automation, choose the columns that are important for everything universal, and you can still report everything else. But that's not what I just said was not it's a non-starter a year ago, right? Because you needed a particular set of skills to do so.
Sure.
But I think to me, that's why still Excel is such a big thing, is because everything I would like to do, I don't have that ability or the technology to do.
Yes, I'll agree with you in some areas. I think that's also, I think your comment around like accessible tools in my hands that can help me do my daily job. Excel is just kind of one of those things. Like it's a staple there. I think the reason that makes Excel extremely powerful for me, and this is how I look at it, when I think to your point also, right? We don't necessarily think about the process. We think about I've got to get this thing calculated. I've got to do this thing, this effort, whatever that is. And a lot of times when I teach classes to Power BI, I show people Power Query. But one of the underrated features I think of Excel is the ability to use Power Query. That's something that's just not there. People aren't trained on it. You just basically copy paste data into Excel and think you're done. But actually, there's a better way of getting the data into Excel to begin with. So one, that's a hidden gem that I wish was a bit more exposed and more easily for people to use, because that's a great entry point to Excel. But to your point, Tommy, like going back to the process and Excel, I think the power of Excel is having this table of data and being able to like crunch out formulas in line and see the results instantly from those formulas. That's where people really like to see so what is the alternative to that? All right, what would be the alternative to not going to an Excel document and adding, I've got 3 rows of data. I'm going to add a 4th row of data. I make the formula. I click the little button, and then the formula rolls down, and then we have the same formula for all cells, right? Super easy. Even when I'm doing simple math, Tommy, like I'll be just adding a couple numbers together, and instead of going out and go get a calculator to go do it, I'll open up Excel and I'll write down 3 or 4 numbers, and I'll do a little sum across all those cells. It's just easier. It's just it's a very fast method to stub out some like calculations around data. So my thinking here is, when you have a given table of data and you need to add additional columns, additional pieces to it, Excel is such an easy method to be able to produce that. And by contrast, right? Okay, that's Excel. I'm on the sheet. I have the data. I can make the formula and immediately the results show up. That's super fast. When I do that same experience in like Power BI or other data engineering tools, I can see the data, I can shape it and transform it slightly, but I'm usually jumping between another program, another window. I'm not able to like in line right next to the original thing, recalculate and put everything down there quickly. Right. And so, I think there's a lot of this, threshold of, how little, like, also, Tommy, to this degree as well, what if I want to copy paste a lot of data? What if I want to make a lot of rows? What if I want to edit multiple rows of data very quickly? When I think about the SQL database world, there's not a lot of really good tools out there that are like, wow, I've got this really rich table of data and I want to modify or I change a bunch of things all at once, or do a find and replace and a bunch of things the tooling that we get for that just isn't quite there. It's just different.
Because we're talking about 2 different types of data, and I love
not types of data. It's just it's 2 different ways of interaction with the data. I think
true, but when I say the 2 different types of data, because I love the point you made, or 2 different purposes of data. That's probably a better way to put it. Every example you just did, which I do as well, is ad hoc, temporary, something I need to quickly see, and I can quickly I'm going to send out or move.
I'm going to say maybe,
but really kind
keep going. But I'm going to say maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Should be.
Maybe it's initially started out as like, it probably started out as a temporary solution.
Oh yeah.
But then I get a request to revise it and add more. Yeah.
Weeds, right. But
correct.
Generally speaking, when you're saying I need to get that lines of data, I'm going to quickly show someone, I'm going to quickly do something. Yes. But it doesn't meant to have legs. It's not meant to say a year from now, I'm going to use the same data set or that same Excel table. It's something I need to see now, need to show now, need to do now. Everything in Fabric or a sales dashboard too should be something that's more long-standing. It's going to live for a longer time. So there are purposes of data here that we're talking about where I want to do this quick formula. When I worked at digital marketing agency, why we used Excel so much was, I would download all these AdWords data and the cost per click and impressions. And I would say, well, what if we change things, a little widgets? And if I change this to say, what if our cost per click, or we got impressions up, yada, yada, yada. And I would just do that in that Excel file. But that was for that set of data, right? And so those changes I wanted to make right now or wanted to see. But the problem was, one, I could save that, but I probably moved on. The next time I needed to do it, I needed a new set of data because the data changed. So Excel works for the temporary, ad hoc, want to look at. But anything, if I'm doing a sales dashboard, but if I'm doing anything out there where it's going to be something that is going to be reoccurring, the data, in a sense, structure doesn't change. I don't want to use Excel, and I want to migrate to something where that can be automated. That's our buzzword here. So Excel works really well for my temporary ad hoc solutions. but it is hard. I'm not saying impossible, and I'm not saying terrible. It is difficult when you're trying to do things that are more have or should have longer legs.
I think but also I think there's this. I want to introduce the concept of like just build it so it works, and then build it so it lasts. Right? There's two kind of they're kind of conflicting ideas. They're kind of contrasting, right? So on one hand, I just need to build something that works. It's got to be quick to develop initially. I don't know what's going to work, honestly, when I start some of these projects. I just know I need to do something with data. And sometimes the output of the visual, the output of the data, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I may not even have the right amount of data. I just need to get something in a place where I could quickly manipulate it. And I need to build 3 or 4 or 5 iterations on this data product. Call it an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
I need to do 3 or 4 or 5 iterations on the data product until I get to a place where I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I'm actually getting the right data I need in. The data is coming in the right way. I'm cleaning it the right way. Like it's ready to be used. And so I think I'm going to hang on the point here you made, Tommy. I think you hit on something that's important here. Is they're using this Excel sheet as a sales metric dashboard, right? Dashboards come with a lot of weight and terminology that goes along with it. But if I'm going to interpret what I hear the question as and just define like, a milestone, then we can kind of unpack from there, right? If we're doing this as a sales dashboard, who's my audience? Where is this going? What are they going to do when they get there, right? If I can answer some of those questions, I can have a better understanding of like, okay, is this a read-only document that sits on a SharePoint page that some executive is going to go open and look at and say, here's my sales numbers? Or is this an Excel document that the analyst will be using and they're going to be making multiple pages of dashboards, right? And then printing them out, turning them into a PDF, and then sending an email around with the PDF? Or is this an Excel file that we're going to email around the organization? There's many different ways to share this dashboard. And I think if we think about the consumption of it, that will slightly change what we do with it. So, I would even step back for a moment. Well, yes, we're talking about Excel sheets. We're talking about dashboards. Great, fine. I would kind of step back and say, okay, what's my audience? What's the purpose? What should they see when they get there? And what their action should be when they leave? Like if we can just walk through just a little bit of story at the front here, I think this frames out a lot of what you can and cannot do. Another couple questions I'd ask myself would be, how repeatable is this data? How often does it change? Does the dashboard need to change regularly? Are we constantly manipulating things? Or is it, we've done this for 2 years now and we now have the dashboard, it's kind of set, right? These are the metrics that we go after. And Tommy, I know you're going to love this point because I know you talk about this all the time. Do we even understand the definitions of the KPIs and measures and things in the dashboard? Is this a defined metric that if I gave this to multiple people in the organization, they would understand, active users? I mean, it's just anytime I do any report, like you could say the word active users, but that could mean 3 totally different things. And depending on where you're getting active users from, like I'm thinking like website traffic, right? Or even like watching videos on YouTube or Twitter, right? You can have a view that's not the same as an impression. And so defining what those things mean, and then each platform where you pull them in from, defining that language and bringing it in, so there's a consistent language across this, is that even done? So we may be spitting out dashboards in Excel, but does anyone even understand what we're producing there? And is there a common kind of like language or definition of how our business speaks about the data? Okay.
Yeah.
Pause right there. Your reaction, Tommy.
No, I think, I mean, you're speaking my language here. I think there's an inflection point to what you said in terms of when you need to decide if Excel is still the right tool, because you made some really good points here. Not just about, I love the idea first about when we're talking about who's actually looking at this. And a lot of times those people also influence something else. And I have this trick. It's kind of like the guess your weight trick to say, if I know how complex an Excel file is, I'll ask people, how many iterations has this gone through? How many requests or changes?
How long have you been building this thing?
Right.
Like even if you've been building this Excel file for 10 years.
Oh yeah.
And it's still not locked down yet. Like it's going to be complex.
The more times and the more people who see it have more requests on how they want it to be viewed.
Yep. I agree.
It's more complicated, and it makes it, and that's the thing though too, Mike, when we're talking about a migration, people are always expecting to take that Excel dashboard, whatever form it's in, and copy paste that into something in Power BI, but it refreshes, it's automated. And most of the time, and I don't like using the word impossible, but it's not going to be what people expect it to be. That's probably the best way of putting it.
Hmm.
If you want to take the normal Excel dashboards that people have and say, just put that in Excel, well, it doesn't translate because
Mm-hmm.
there are so many manual efforts in those Excel files because of how people want to see it. Well, I want to see, my sales region, but with this percentage, and it doesn't equate to a DAX measure or to a semantic model in
Mm-hmm.
any capacity, right? So I think there's an inflection point at some, like, Excel files, fine. Maybe they work for some situations, but there's a threshold. There's some conversation that needs to be had with how many viewers do we have? And I think that's such a good place to start. I think how many people are actually looking at this? If we're over a certain threshold of people, and how much hours are we putting into this, that we need to talk about this having a grow up story. It can't live in Excel because I guarantee you this person's sending us this dang message in the first place is because they're probably feeling like their head's underwater, just trying to get this done on a weekly basis, not improving it or optimizing it, just getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think there has to be this point of all these metrics that we're looking at. And I guarantee you there's, to your point, 80% of those metrics are probably don't need to be on that first page. They've just been added. Everything's just been added. Nothing's been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's just been added on top of each other. So you have this complex monstrosity where we have to talk about something else. We have to talk about a greater grow up story. But I'm going to focus here on the consumer side of this because, Mike, I don't think we talk about that part enough here when we're talking about these Excel files of how many people are actually looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm gonna. I want to go a couple of things. So I want to kind of maybe transition the comment. I want to slightly move away from like the Excel and the needs there. I want to kind of transition a bit more into like, okay, so let's give some advice here. Like, what would I do? So if this is me, right? I'm looking at this going like, okay, I'm this person who's managed this Excel file. I'm building maybe more things into it. I'm continuing evolving this Excel sheet to this metric dashboard. What do I use? And what do I look at this thing and say, okay, how do we get from where we are now into what we want to do, which is Power BI? So a couple observations I would say that I see right now. It feels to me like there's a major gap between Excel and Power BI, or Excel and Fabric, because yeah, and think about like what we do in Excel. Like it's this table, it's kind of like this flexible thing that I'm able to like put calculations in. Yes, I can do that in Power Query, but it doesn't really feel like Excel, right? Still, people want that ability to have like multiple cells, a table. So there's some missing feature around like, why can't I land an Excel file inside a workspace and just have a table defined there, right? And why can't I, inside that Excel document, make it super easy for me to say, look, I'm going to define a table inside Excel. People can go in and edit it. They can change the data and just have some very lightweight data protection pieces on top of this. I'm thinking like, okay, look, this Excel table is going to exist inside Power BI or Fabric, and it will be backed by a SQL server. And so I can, while I'm in that Excel file, I can do all the Excel things that I normally could do. I could make the tables, I can make columns, I can do all the calculations I need to. And I think there should be this really easy button that says, look, take this table, and then inside that Excel file, you can basically set up a setting, right? On close, save this table back to this SQL server. Right, kind of back it, make it just kind of happen behind the scenes, and then just have that exposed for like anytime I'm building a semantic model somewhere else for reporting. So to me, there's a gap there. There's a gap between like what I do in Excel and what I want Fabric and Power BI to be doing. And there's this whole concept in my mind is thinking around, why isn't there this easier table manipulation structure that just exists that makes me feel comfortable like Excel, but then easily works. Now, I'll fully admit, there are other tables out there. Other companies have produced them, albeit I think this should be built into the product. I think this is something that Microsoft should just take and own. And because they've already owned Power Query, they already own pivot tables, all the things, this should just be part of the experience. They should make an Excel-like table inside Power BI. Now, maybe there's a reason why there has been a hard line between these two things, because Power BI is now starting to step on the toes of Excel, and that would be cutting into their own business, and they don't want that they want a clean separation between the two. There may be some political stuff in there. I don't know. I don't understand it. But what I want is I want. I mean, even if I could just embed my Excel file right into Power BI, and I know you can upload them, so I do know that's available to you.
But continue.
But I think that's something that needs to be there. So so I think there's a gap right between the two experiences. However, if I am this person, there's a tangent. Sorry, I'll come back. What am I going to recommend? Some of my recommendations. One of them is I'll go look through my Excel file and figure out where are my index matches occurring? Where is the VLOOKUPs occurring? Because when I see those types of things, I'm thinking, okay, I have two tables of data and there's a relationship between the data. That's what we're doing basically. So already I'm saying, okay, you're loading data in two different places and you're using a lookup feature to get some information together. That's the start of a data model. And you want to have that started. So that's one thing I'm looking for. I'm also thinking about if you're not using Power Query today, straight up, number one step should be start using Power Query. Anytime you're loading data into Excel, you should 100% be using Power Query, because if you ever wanted to migrate the Excel thing into Power BI, Power Query just automatically loads. So even just starting, so you want an easier migration path to go from this Excel file into something that's Power BI. Don't copy and paste any data into the Excel file.
Ever.
Figure out a way of letting people create data and always load it in using Power Query, because that way when you are editing data later on and you want to migrate to Power BI, now you have a much cleaner way to do this, right? There's a much easier method for you to load data in. And this is, again, maybe I'll go back to this point of like the tables and how it doesn't really work with the Power BI experience, right? What if I could just design the table, right? Not even multiple sheets. What if I just said, this is the table where I will enter data into, right? So don't even think about like all the functionality on one sheet, but it's just a single table. And that way, anything you do in that table is automatically captured, and then on close or saving, or you could even push the data. Like, I'm done, I've made my changes, I'm going to push that data somewhere, and then immediately the semantic model can say, oh, I understand what this table is. I'm going to go grab it and just load it in or import it or get it in immediately. So there's something there that's not quite refined yet in my mind. It's not quite dialed yet. There's some friction, I would say, around that, because really what you want is you need users to go into a web browser and have multiple tables open, enter the data they need to enter, have some rules for validation of that data, and then just have it work.
Dude,
like that's what you need.
And I'm going to reiterate that. And I know we're getting close on time, but let's not underestimate here the Power Query side, and not even in a data flow here too, because we're not saying use Power Query just because it's cool. It's really, to me, it's two main purposes. It's the automation, the amount of time saved, but the lack of human error now that we're going to deal with. I'm going to take a look at this particular project here, and I'm going to look at, well, what does the data look like coming in? Your copy and paste or whatever you're downloading from whatever platform. What's that raw data look like? Okay, so can we do some automation around this? Because that's going to eliminate that 18 people going in there like, I need to do this particular formula and I have to do it this way, which people get wrong because we're people. 100%. And again, the amount of time, did that person enter the information so now I can go in? I can do that with Power Query, and I can do that in Excel if I'm not even if I'm doing Power BI. I cannot tell you, Mike, and I could, because you could tell me too, the amount of projects you've done that have been saved just because of that. We've been able to solve because we've been able to automate all these rows of data that people thought only could be done manually, but we can do in Power Query. And then all of a sudden we're eliminating human error, because I know it's going to come in this way. It's going to do this recipe. It's going to do these steps, and we're going to have the final output. And that can live in Power BI, or can live in your final Excel sheet, your final Excel dashboard. But that's where you start. And to me, there's multiple ways that you can, in a sense, migrate this, but I'm starting with the raw data, and I'm saying, how can we eliminate the manual formulas and the head effort, the head knowledge, and all those different steps? Then we can deal with, after we have solved that, on where it's going to live and what type of dashboard that we want. But we have to solve first that human, multiple steps there. Now, I'm going to push, if I can do this in Power Query, if I can automate this, I'm going to push for Power BI, because this also gives a great opportunity for us not to deal with 18 rows and 25, probably looking at 75 different rows of metrics that I don't need when I only need 3 to actually look at for my team. So this also gives a great opportunity if I have everything automated, say, well, what type of dashboard do we really want?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than this monstrosity of whatever we're dealing with, because I guarantee you anything in Excel is it's hard to look at. So how can we make that easier? But that's kind of my twofold step there.
Yeah, I think so for me, I think the major points of it as I wrap up here will be automation is going to be key, right? The one of the things that you do a lot of in Excel is manual work.
Mhm.
We're looking to in place or instill things when you're doing that work. Figure out ways to automate it as much as possible, right? Don't let people enter data into the exact Excel file. Instead, make them put it in other places, either like SharePoint lists or put the information into a different Excel file that's just data entry information, right? So separating those things apart a little bit gives you some flexibility there to let people edit and modify their own data other places. So Power Query is a great tool to start automating more things. So that's one there.
Right.
Another suggestion, as you were talking, Tommy, that brought to mind here would be really if you're not using pivot tables, if you're not using pivot charts, and if you're not using slicers in the Excel document, those are things I would encourage you to start using, because that will also make it when users see dashboards and reports built that way, when they move to Power BI, it will be easier for them to move into like, hey, there's already a slicer here. We have this thing called a filter pane. It operates very similar to what you would see in the Excel document as a slicer. So I think there's also something there as well. When you start building like some of that VBA, like interactivity, page navigation, changing the visuals, those are bookmarks. So I think you're also trying to figure out, okay, how can I start catering my Excel experience to mirror what I would be building in Power BI? So to kind of wrap up my thoughts here would be, make sure you're using tables inside Excel. That's a big win for loading data. Automate as much as possible using Power Query. You want a ton of that. If you can have no manual entry into your Excel dashboard, do it, right? Because then when you're ready to migrate, it'll be much easier for you to get to the next step. And then I would also argue, use some of the more advanced features of Excel. Really learn how to use pivot tables. Really learn how to use pivot charts. Work in slicers on your data sets. You can build a data model inside Excel. You can build measures and calculations on top of these tables. Find places where you're using index match or VLOOKUP. Those are separate tables that are being related together via a relationship. So you do that. Start modeling the data together in that Excel world. And so I'd almost even envision this as going, okay, let's pull out all of the data entry pieces and put it in a separate place. Let's load all the data in a single Excel file, and then we import it, we model it, we shape it. And then from that, we're only building pivot tables, pivot charts, and slicers throughout the report. And now you're basically at some level, you're already thinking Power BI ways of building the data engineering, modeling, and bringing the data in. So that's an easy way to get started immediately with Excel. And now you don't have, when you get to the Power BI side of the world, it'll be much easier, I think, for you to migrate.
And it's funny. The last thing I'll say, Mike, first, I got a weird question for you, but once you got into the data modeling side, you kind of into the world of data governance too, because you also have some structure of this, and you're kind of entering that world of actually structure of, hey, we can do this, we can't do this. But I'm going to ask you, is an Excel power pivot table a semantic model or a data model?
It is. I mean,
Which
it's
one?
usually I would say it's a semantic model.
Okay.
It's using the Vertipaq engine to do the work. So I mean, it is a semantic model. I would argue
I haven't
most of the things
say anything on that yet. So
most of the things in Excel is a single table, right? It's usually a single table that you're using to produce the answers. But when you start doing actual data modeling and using Power Query, bringing in the tables, making measures, that's really where I started to learn DAX to begin with. I started there. That's when I started figuring, like, this is really confusing. I really don't understand what's going on here. Like, that's when I started really getting myself exposed to like those initial pieces of this. And then as I matured, I was overwriting DAX and making it way too complex, even in Excel. And then I figured out later on, it was better to start making better data engineering choices inside Power Query, shaping the data so that it was actually ready to be consumed for the measures, the things that I'm going to actually produce inside the report. So I think those are good. Anyways, I think that's probably a good enough episode for today. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate this one. I hope this is a very big derivation from what we've been talking about recently, which has been a lot of fabric recently. But we're kind of taking a big step back here for those Excel users, migrating them into Power BI or Power BI level asset things. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you found this useful or found a couple of nuggets here that you might find helpful, please forward this conversation to someone else. We'd love for you to share this conversation and podcast with other people. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend. We do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Well, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all powerbi.tips social media channels.
I can tell you've been on a break, Tommy. It's got a little hard to say that.
Something sounded weird about .tips, and I was like, I got thrown off. I'm like, I had a brain fart. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So
sounds good. Awesome. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.